I'm going to ask you some pointed questions, Greg, and I'm going to hope you're going to love it. If you say, "Hey, no, come on, Zolk, back off," you've got a fair bit of expertise around scheduling. I have a statement that I say baseline schedule is the greatest lie ever told.
This is the Contender's Edge podcast, where ideas challenge institutions and underdogs rise to lead in construction.
Well, it's afternoon here, Greg, so I'm going to say good afternoon.
And good afternoon to you too.
So welcome to our Contender's Edge podcast. And really why we picked Contender's Edge as a title was to really help all the companies that don't have that big infrastructure behind them or have been around for hundreds of years, is to realize that you're always contending and trying to keep up and keep ahead of the game. So that's really the name of our series. Maybe you can do a quick introduction of yourself. I mean, I know you got some really awesome accolades, but I'll let you share them.
Yeah, I'm managing director at FTI Consulting. I work out of the New York City office. FTI is a large consulting company, global. And what I work on in particular is construction. I focus on schedule and delay, acceleration, disruption, and then quantifying those costs that result from them. And when necessary, I testify in court and arbitration. But generally, I try to help clients assess their situation on problem projects and then come to some sort of resolution with the opposing party, whether it be the contractor, the owner, subcontractor, designer. So that's what I do. I've got a history. I'm sure we'll chat a little bit about it. Where I started out on the engineering side, moved over to the legal side, and then back into the engineering side at this point in my career.
You went to the dark side, you came back? Is that what you're saying?
Depends on who I'm talking to. The dark side can mean two different things, right?
I just leaving it out there for interpretation. You took it. You came back to engineering. For anyone that's young that's listening in, people who studied engineering, they're slightly biased, but if there's undergraduate degrees you want to leave school with, it's probably one of the better ones. And secondly, there is a very direct connection between engineering and law that has so much opportunity in the industry. So I think you kind of went down a path that also gave you a new home into another place, into the consulting world, right?
Yeah, exactly. No, I mean, it was actually kind of serendipity, if you will. I mean, I fell into claims very early in my career, didn't really know much about them when I was in college, and just really enjoyed sort of unpacking the puzzle, coming to some sort of resolution, the negotiation, the advocacy, and who was I working with on many of our disputes, our outside attorneys. And so kind of got to the point where I sort of said, I like what they're doing and I think I could do it too. So I went back to school at night and I became a construction attorney, which I did for a good portion of my career.
Engineering is not a degree you can do at night. The law you can. So all my lawyer friends that are listening, I'm taking cracks at you guys. It's not because I don't love you. I just don't love you a lot. So I think we shared earlier that I've spent almost closing in on 30 years in the industry. And I've seen my share of conflict arising on a job site. And some of them you resolved amicably. And some of them, unfortunately, end up in litigation. And that's the reality of why project management tools exist for the large part, is that they're all CYA tools. I'm going to ask you some pointed questions, Greg, and I'm going to hope you're going to love it. If you say, "Hey, no, come on, Zolk, back off," you've got a fair bit of expertise around scheduling. I have a statement that I say baseline schedule is the greatest lie ever told, because it's built usually in a vacuum somewhere, right? And then the real world kicks in. Yeah. So is there any pointers that you have for maybe some of the audience that, scheduling is not their strength, that things that they may want to identify? Because really the schedule starts to drive the issues that come up later on the project, because we don't either account for it, or we haven't factored in where these could arise and how it implicates it, because we don't tie the dots for everyone.
Yeah, I mean, scheduling is a giant world. I mean, there's many people like myself that spend a lot of time looking at schedules and trying to figure out, what happened, what should have happened, what the schedule showed. Was that connected to reality? Was that a good forecast? All those things. And there's lots of problems. I'm a bit jaded because most of the projects that I get involved with, there's been problems. I'm always happy to have friends tell me that there's I would guess probably a majority of projects that have problems that can be worked out, certainly from the schedule point of view, from the dispute point of view. But the vast majority of what I deal with is all the greatest hits of the problems that are out there. And so from my point of view, the if I can offer any advice, it'd just be that, one of the things that I look at from a schedule point of view is you have to keep in mind, what level of detail are you looking for, right? When I get involved in a project, what I do is I look at a schedule and I sort of bring it to a very high level and say, if I was talking to, a foreman or a superintendent, how would they tell me they were going to build the project, right? And we know, it's 15, it's 20 activities, it's boom, 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 that kind of thing. Geography gets involved, but it's not to the level of, a 4,000 activity P6 schedule, right? And I think that that's very helpful to sort of see big picture of what we're talking about, and then have some of the specialists, have the people that really know what they're doing, get into, well, wait a minute, that sounds great at the high level, but how do you get this done and that done at the same time or in sequence when you're going to have, you're going to run out of time, so to speak, or you're not going to have the resources or things of that nature. And so, when I get involved with schedules and try to figure out what happened, I'm constantly going back and forth between high level aspects of it to much more deep level. What is the predecessor as a finish to start, as a start to start with a lag, things like that. But at the end of the day, when you're actually trying to convince somebody to resolve it or trying to convince someone that you understand it, I think you tend to be much more at the higher level, because I think some of the decision makers can't digest and aren't experienced enough to understand that deep level. So it's a mix between high and low level.
Yeah, I guess, over 30 years, I realized that, first of all, if you're getting into the situation where there's a dispute and there's a resolution required, you're probably already losing anyways. And, I've had that age old saying with my lawyers that if you have to talk to your lawyer, chances are you're at a loss. And the question is, can you quantify this loss and mitigate it going forward? So if I understand and hear things correctly, building a schedule is starting the point is the proper thing. In the absence of any schedule, you're going to have a lot of issues and a lot of things to explain later on. Second thing is, putting some science behind the level of detail, putting into schedule.
Right.
Right.
Yep.
What's your viewpoint on these clients that put out a schedule says, I want this building built in 365 days?
Well, I mean, I think in a lot of situations, that's part of what's going on in our industry, right? As interest rates go up, certainly on the private side, the cost of building is going up, and time is a major factor when you're talking $100 million, a 500 million, $1 billion project. If they can cut 6 months off that schedule, that's many, many, many dollars. So I think that sort of drives it. But I think, unfortunately, we're in a situation where in the construction world, it's hard to tell someone what they don't want to hear, that schedule is unrealistic, or it's going to cost an exorbitant amount of money to essentially accelerate it to that preferred schedule. And so when people are being picked to be the general contractor, the design builder, the CM, the level of honesty, the level of pushback sometimes isn't maybe what it needs to be. But I completely understand it from a commercial point of view. They want to get that project. So I don't know. I think that's human beings being human beings, and assessment of risk. On a sizable job, are there ways to set up a faster pace? Yes. Does everyone know everything when they get the job? No. So it's in the gray zone. It's in the gray zone. But I think owners are definitely being much more aggressive now than they were 30 years ago. And I think
Absolutely.
contractors are more willing to accept it because that's what's out on the street and that's what keeps them busy. So.
Yeah, and I think you touched on a really good point is that the contractors are willing to, entertain or humor this accounting idea of we're going to finish in 365 days. I know in my experience, they say, well, how did you plan to build it? I said, well, I didn't plan to build it with 800 RFIs. I didn't plan to build it without a building permit delay. I didn't plan. Those are your problems. So if you had given it to me, I probably would have got it done.
I didn't plan that differing site condition either, right?
Yeah, like I didn't plan to dig a hole and find an extra building down below.
Right.
And we've seen that time and time again. So those are all your problems. Those are not my problems. I would have got it done. So tell me I'm wrong or I'm the liar. Yes, you're the liar. You gave me the wrong drawings.
Sure. I mean, I think a lot of this is risk assessment, right? And when you are in the bid phase, and I've worked for a contractor where we had bids going out, some of it you have time, some of it you don't. And you have to be very quick and judicious about what you see as potential problems. And you have to be realistic. A good example is you're doing a building for a casino, and the casino knows that as soon as they open, they're going to start making money, almost printing money. So guess how much the liquidated damages are, right? Now that's not necessarily scheduled, but they want that schedule compressed, and they're going to put a hammer there to say get it done in this unrealistic expectations. Yeah, I've seen liquidated damages $150,000 a day, and when you're talking to operations people or you're talking to estimators, they're not really thinking that adds up over 30 days or 60 days, which on a sizable project is not very much. So I think there has to be some sort of process in the estimating and in the order intake or the project analysis to say, is this beyond what we as a company are willing to accept based on, what kind of, there are certain companies out there, they want the really, really difficult jobs because they feel they can make a profit on it and they don't have as much competition. Others are not very good at risk assessment, and so they take on those jobs. In construction, what I've always heard, no matter where I've worked, is you know you're not going to make your year in one project, but one
No.
project can destroy your year. And so it is. You can make some money, but you can lose a whole lot of money on one really bad job. So there's a lot of risk in construction, and I think trying to assess it up front is really what you need to do.
And I think there's an aspect that people forget is the flip side that let's say you think you're going to win in litigation. Well, you got to draw out that process. And the age old saying, "He who has a gold makes a rule." That's the golden rule. Well, a lot of these clients have slightly deeper pockets, and they can hold off a little bit longer.
Yep.
It's not about who gets a smart lawyer at that point in time. Is that who's got the money to bankroll their way out of the situation, and can you hold off to the end?
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, I think in when you're at the point of litigation, hopefully you have made a very important discussion internally with your counselors, with your consultants, with your accountants. Is this something you want to keep doing? And you were realistic, right? You're not going to win 100%. You're not going to get it done in the time frame that you think. So if you win 65% of what you're looking for, and it's 2 years longer than you think, and your men and your resources are tied up, and you're spending money all along the way, if you have a realistic view, then maybe the offer on the other side. I mean, if there's no offer, the offer is terrible, then there's not a whole lot of choice. But many times I see situations where pride, sunk costs, a variety of motivations keep people going in litigation. Litigation oftentimes is, well, not often, most oftentimes I think is kind of a failure of being able to resolve things amicably between the parties, right? I mean,
Yeah,
otherwise
and
you.
unfortunately, if you got public money involved, the public is going to be accountable for it.
Mhm.
We had a recent situation where the client said, "Listen, we don't care what the money is, as long as the judge says we got to pay X, it's not on ours." That
Yeah.
judge said it, but we're not going to be the person to present an offer. And then when they got through mediation, I won't name the names or the region, but they're like, the mediator goes, "You sure you guys want to go through with this? Like your own information is about to bury you." And then there's okay, so what's a suitable number for you? I'm like, well, it was this 2 years ago, but now it's a little bit higher.
Yeah, it's
So
funny you point that out because in the public sphere, I have dealt with that. I don't think that's a primary motivation to get something in writing, but I have accounted it myself and certainly heard it. We actually had one situation where I was working with a contractor and the owner was public. We went to mediation, and part of the resolution or the attempt to resolve it was to have the mediator write a confidential recommendation only to the public entity that they then used as justification for a settlement that came back to us 6 months later. And so that was an innovative way of sort of using exactly what you said. They got the piece of paper. It wasn't a decision, but it was a recommendation after I think we had 2 or 3 hearings. So that mediator was smart in that situation, and that ultimately came to a resolution both parties were happy with.
I just want to circle back a little bit. We talked about at the time of estimate and the risk that we're assuming, and a lot of small medium enterprises, we're not spending a lot of time in bid preparation. We're scrambling. You have one estimator in the company. The reality is that sometimes you have to stop and evaluate what the risk is. And I know that when I took the Primavera course, I'm not going to say the year because then I feel old. And the reality is that there's a science behind preparing a schedule. And if you don't know how the science of behind preparing a schedule, reach out. Happy to give you the Coles Notes versions. If anyone knows what Coles Notes are, or Crib Notes. Greg will know Crib Notes. That's the American version. Canadian was Coles Notes. And the importance of putting together a very simple schedule that says, okay, can I really do this or not do this? Right?
Yeah, no,
Is there
absolutely.
any tricks you can provide them that would say, hey, listen, just take the 15 elements and create a timeline?
Well, sure. I mean, I think there's a couple of things. One is, right, I think some people are intimidated when they see a Primavera schedule or a Microsoft project schedule, right? Because it looks complicated and maybe there's things in there that they don't know. So, what's the old adage? The overall project schedule doesn't matter. It's what the next 3-week schedule looks like,
Yep.
right? Because and we all know many times that's on a piece of paper or an Excel spreadsheet or something that's very low tech because people can digest and they say, okay, this crew is going to do that and this team is going to do that and this sub's going to do that. So I think that making it digestible to the people that are actually driving it is really important. And I think, most scheduling software you can digest into 3, 5, 6 week look aheads by team, by crew, etc. I think another thing is people are inherently motivated by milestones. And so some contracts have stated milestones, whether they have liquidated damages on them or other aspects of it. But a good practice would be to have certain milestones for where you shift from one aspect to another, right? Whether it be by floor or it's the concrete foundations are done or, the bridge abutment on the east side is done, whatever those are. And you make those, they're on the wall of the field trailer. They're in the project manager's cubicle. And everyone knows what they are when you have your monthly project review meetings. Okay, how are we doing on these things? And they'll know, right? Even if they don't know the whole schedule, they'll know, yeah, we're going to have to get going to get that deadline in 3 months or the beginning of next year, something like that. And so I think that makes it very visible, and I think it breaks things down into a digestible form. Those are two things that I've seen used very, very successfully.
Oh, I think that's a great suggestion, and I guess for everyone else that's listening on the podcast today, having measurable milestones that are intimate and check places, that kind of really helps the team to know, and communicating it across the team is probably more important than the baseline schedule you prepared for the owner. Because at the end of the day, we're all relying on the guys with their hands on the tools to get it done. And if they don't know, they're just kind of working to the time. They don't know what to prepare for. They don't know how to organize themselves. They don't even know if they got to work the weekends or what it takes to get it done at that point in time. One of the things that we found that was successful on slightly larger scale jobs is that we always talk to subcontractors and say, listen, what's your workforce capabilities? How many people can you leave available to us? And how much time do you need to get this? Forget the long lead delivery items, because prior to COVID, you could get things in 12 to 14 weeks. Now it's like 40. The reality is that asking your sub trades to give you some kind of timelines that say, hey, do you have 6 men for this job site? Or if you only have 3, I need to double my time for you.
I agree 100%. I think getting your subs, your key subs involved, if you're a general contractor or a CM, I think it's only positive. I think that there are times where it might be difficult to get good feedback from them. But I think most subs would rather be involved if it's a project that they think that they will get, right? That's always the trick. You don't want to waste your time on something that you didn't get. But if they feel that they are going to actually reap the rewards of them helping that project be in a better place, I think they're more than happy to do that. Of course, everyone's got pressures on their time and their costs and things of that nature. But yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm a big fan of design assist and delegated design, and even on the design build side, where you're getting people involved in the design side that are more or less construction people, and because they know what may work, they have an idea, they've seen something on one old job. That might be able to be helpful here. So I think anytime you can bring the construction experience, the construction expertise into the design phase, or the estimating phase, or the project planning phase, I think, theoretically it works, and I've seen it in practice work many, many, many times.
Awesome. Any last little piece that you think you can share with the world that'll make construction a better place?
Make sure you document what's going on in the project, right? I just tell you from my point of view on the backside, I get involved in projects on the at the end of them, and I'll tell you what I look at. I look at emails, right? I look at meeting minutes. I love photographs. I look at daily reports. Obviously, all the correspondence and schedules, and that's probably 80% of the documents that I look at. Obviously I talk to people, but there's projects out there that are well documented, and I don't mean every single word, every single thing, but you can read what's been written, what's been typed, and understand the flow of the project. You can understand what people were thinking. And then there's others where nothing is organized, nothing was recorded. It's a mess to try to understand. Memories have faded. So it makes my job easier, and when my job's easier, that allows our clients to spend less money and hopefully come to a resolution sooner and a better one if that. So that's the plug I make on every time I talk to anybody is make sure you document what you're doing.
Document, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. I mean, well, we leave it with that. I think as a note for anyone in construction, I know sometimes it's scary to document the job because you're thinking, well, how is my client going to feel, whether it's a GC or the owner? But hey, trust me, I can tell you when you go to litigation, every one of those pieces of paper is something a lawyer or judge is never going to read, but then they just stack the paper by weight. And that's the starting of their formation of opinion. So if you're not planning on documenting your job or planning on a schedule, you're essentially planning for failure. So if that's the path you want to take, we're not going to stop you. However, the old saying, right? If you fail to plan, you plan to fail. So hopefully, you guys got some nuggets from here. Greg, if they wanted to reach out to you just to ask you for some simple advice, how could they get in touch with you other than paying FTI a lot of money? But I'm sure you made yourself available.
I'm on LinkedIn. You can find me on the FTI website. Just search under Greg Holness under the experts. I'm in the New York City office, and either way, I'm easy to get a hold of, and I'd be happy to have a chat with anybody who has any questions.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Rick, for being part of this. Really, the Contender series and the Contender's Edge is really what we're trying to get, is that people should understand that there's a lot of opportunity to learn from people like yourself. I can give you little tidbits of knowledge. As my friend Angelina always says to me, yes, you've got stories to tell us, but these stories are actually all real. I've lived them. I've experienced it. And I can tell you right now, there's a way to win and there's a way to lose. Be on the winning side.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks very much for having me. I enjoyed it. Thanks very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to the Contender's Edge podcast. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next one.